Hey guys, Fun Bun here. It's time for Gatsby Chapter 3, and let me tell you, there ain't nobody party like a Gatsby party, okay? Like, it is seriously the partiest party of all the parties that are gonna party anywhere there's ever been parties. You think you have been to some cool parties before? I guarantee you've never been to a Gatsby party. Most of this chapter, okay, most of it is Gatsby's party. So this fun thing happens at the beginning of the chapter. A butler, so a serving person who works for Mr. Gatsby, comes over to Nick and says, "Hey, I've got an invitation for you. Mr. Gatsby is inviting you to the party he's going to throw tonight." And Nick's like, "Yay, that sounds great. I've been wanting to meet Mr. Gatsby," and all that. And it's, he's looking forward to having a fun party time. So he gets ready, gets dressed, goes over to the party, finds out that, everybody comes to these parties, and he's the only one who got, a personal invitation, which is, I don't know, a little weird, I guess, but it is what it is. So he has his invitation. He tries to show it to the people, like the butlers, to say, "Hey, I'm allowed to come in," and they're all like, "We don't care who comes in." Everybody shows up at Gatsby's party. Sometimes it's like, "Hey, I'm going to bring all my friends and we're going to go to Gatsby's party." And sometimes people are just walking by and they walk in because it's a party. Gatsby has a super big house. It's enormous and it's full of people all over the place, in the gardens, in the swimming pool, on the beach. He has all the alcohol and the dinners. They serve 2 full dinners at this party that are catered by people. They bring in crates and crates and crates of fruit and stuff to make drinks with. And at the end of the party, all this stuff is just carried back out because it's all gone and they used it all. And this is a huge ordeal. Lots and lots and lots of people come and have a good time at Gatsby's party. So Nick goes and he's like, "I don't know anybody and I feel awkward and I'm just going to walk around here for a minute." And then he's like, "I think I need to get something to drink," because Nick apparently does that kind of a lot. Remember? We're not sure if he's a super reliable guy because he's always drinking, and that kind of messes with your mind a bit. But he finds eventually Jordan Baker, and he talks to Jordan, and they're talking to some people at the party, and everybody has an idea of who Gatsby is, but nobody seems to know who Gatsby is. Let me explain. People are like, "Oh, Gatsby killed a guy one time." Or they're like, "Hey, Gatsby was a spy. He's actually a German." Remember, this is just after World War I, and the Germans were bad guys. So being like, "Hey, he's a German spy," is kind of like being like, "He's our enemy, but also he's super rich and he throws parties, so we don't care. Yay!" That's kind of what happened. So everybody seems to think they know something about who he is and what he does. And then, we don't really know him. So Nick and Jordan are walking around. Nick's like, "Hey, who is Gatsby? I want to introduce myself. He's my neighbor. He invited me to the party. I want to say hi. I want to ask him how you doing. We'll make friends." But nobody seems to be able to tell him who or where Gatsby is. Is this guy just a joke or a made-up guy or something? He's not sure. And then he's finally done looking for Gatsby, and he decides to have a seat, and he's just talking to some dude that happens to be there. And they start talking about, "Hey, you look a little familiar." And the other guy's like, "Yeah, you look a little familiar too." And they come to find out that they served together in World War I. This is Nick and some random guy that he meets. And they're like, "You both look familiar." And they're like, "We're in the same battalion, the same group of soldiers." And so then the other person actually turns out to be Gatsby. Shocker, right? In movie language, they think they call that a meet cute, although that might only be for people starting relationships. I spent all the time looking for him, and then I couldn't find him, and then I just started talking to a random person, and it happened to be him. Ta-da! It happens, I guess. Maybe it only happens in books, but in this book, that's what happens. So Gatsby's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've been a bad host. I thought you knew who I was, and it's nice to meet you officially, and we should go hang out together, and I've got a boat. Let's take some trips on the boat," and all of this stuff. Really trying to kind of get in close with Nick, which is cool. But they don't talk for too long, and then Mr. Gatsby has a phone call he's got to take. So he goes off to take his phone call because some business deal or something that he's got to be a part of. So he goes and takes his phone call and doesn't actually see Nick again for kind of a while. Towards the end of the night, Nick and Jordan are talking, and a butler comes and asks Jordan to come and see Mr. Gatsby because Mr. Gatsby wants to talk to her about something. And they're gone for like an hour. And then Jordan comes back and she's all like, oh my goodness, oh my gosh, like this thing just happened. And I can't tell you about it, Nick, because I told Gatsby I wouldn't. And he just told me the most, sensational something or other. But I shouldn't talk about it. Bye-bye. And she like leaves. And so Nick's like, this is weird. And so then the party ends and Nick ends up heading on back to his house. And Gatsby's like, hey, make sure you remember we're going out on the boat tomorrow and stuff like that. And the chapter sort of ends with this little discussion from Nick. Like Nick later on, Nick, the one who's writing the story, not Nick in the story. And he says, hey, I've given you the impression that all of these things happen like day after day after day. But this stuff is actually spread out over several weeks throughout a summer. And while it sounds like, hey, this happened, and the next day this happened, like his afternoon party with Tom and his lady friend Myrtle and all of their friends and stuff, like that happened a few weeks before this, probably, even though it seems like in the book that there's one right after another. In between, Nick was doing his job and selling bonds, and he actually met a girl from Jersey City that he was dating for a little while, and that didn't work out. And then he decides finally he's going to actually like try to date Jordan. And they're about to start trying to do the whole datey thing. But, it didn't all happen in the course of like 3 days. All this stuff was spread out a bit. And he wanted to make sure that his readers knew that. Like, he wasn't just a party guy, alcoholic, drinking all the time, going to party. He had a day job, and occasionally things happened, and he's telling us about them. So that's kind of his little spiel at the end. Now, it's important to notice two things. Number one, nobody really seems to know the truth about Gatsby. We'll hear from Gatsby in chapter 4. You'll do a little bit of reading about him today in one of your stations, and he'll talk about, what he says he is. He'll talk to Nick about it. This is who he says he is. But, we're not really sure yet who Gatsby is and where he came from. We'll learn all that later on. But right now, he's still kind of a mystery. He's that mystery man sort of dude next door. Also, it's important to look at the difference between these two parties. So if Tom and Daisy were going to have like a social party, people would come to their house. They would marvel at how magnificent their house is. Everything would be proper. Everything would be like neat and clean, and dinner would be served specifically at specific times. And there would be a smaller gathering, and all of the people there would be like super rich, super elite, old money people. But when Gatsby throws a party, it is just all crazy all the time. Everybody's like, I don't care where you're from. I don't care who you are. We're going to show up. We're going to, take carpool and stuff like into Gatsby's house. There's going to be a ton of cars there. We're all going to do whatever we want around Gatsby's house, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to drink, and we're going to be crazy, and we're going to be loud, and it's going to be outrageous, and all that's going on. That's a huge difference between an old money and a new money way of having a party, okay? Even Tom's other party, where, that we saw last time in chapter 2, even Tom's other party was very different, where, like, he almost treated the people there like they were his entertainment, right? They just, he ordered them around like servants and, hey, let's do this, let's do that. He wanted to be the guy that everybody looked up to, but he wasn't there to make friends or anything. He was just there to, show off and get his, little happiness and whatever else that he wanted. And that was it. But he doesn't treat people like equals in any way. He's just like, hey, you guys are going to do what I say because I'm the rich person and I'm going to pay for all this. Gatsby, on the other hand, is like mostly anonymous. He's moving around this party and talking to people, and people don't even know who they're talking to. They don't even realize that they're talking to Gatsby. Like, that's the thing, because that's not what Gatsby's about. He's not doing the parties in order to just be famous and rich and have everybody talk to him. He's got a very specific reason for throwing parties like this. And we're going to find out what that is soon. Chapter 4, chapter 5, somewhere in there. That's when we'll find out why Gatsby throws his parties. He's got an interesting reason. We're not going to tell you that it's not interesting. It also might be a little creepy. We'll see. You remember that green light? Have you figured out where the green light is yet? We'll talk more about that, but the green light is something that Gatsby can see across the bay, looking from West Egg towards East Egg. So give some thought into that. What do you think the green light is? What do you think it represents? Today, you're going to have some looking at what everybody says about Gatsby. What do you think is true about him? That's going to be a question that you'll answer today. And also, no also. That's all I got. Okay, so that's Gatsby, chapter 3, party time, party down. It is big, it is lavish, it is expensive. There's all the people, they're doing all the things. They've got all the stuff. Yeah, it's a thing. We'll see it in the show and we'll read it in the book. And other than that, this is Fun Bun, over and out.